They all thought he was just another lost kid. When 19-year-old Jalen Dawson walked into the courtroom, hoodie half-zipped, hands shoved casually in his pockets, everyone had already made up their minds. The judge didn't see a young man, he saw a case number. The prosecutor didn't see a challenge, he saw a routine win. And the courtroom spectators? They didn't see a defendant, they saw a punchline waiting to happen. But that was before he opened his mouth. The Los Angeles County Courthouse buzzed with low murmurs as Jalen took his place at the defense table. The room was unusually full for a weekday morning. Court staff whispered. Reporters typed quickly. Even the bailiff looked up more than once from his phone. Something about this case had pulled people in, but no one expected what was coming. Judge Walter Grayson looked over his glasses at the teenager before him, unimpressed. He had sentenced hundreds like him. His fingers tapped on the edge of the bench, rhythmic and dismissive. Mr. Dawson, he said, voice dripping with condescension. You ready to take this seriously, or should we reschedule after recess? A few chuckles echoed. Laughter, casual and cruel. The prosecutor grinned. Everyone knew this kind of case. Grand theft auto. Resisting arrest. Slam dunk conviction. Another young man headed toward a future already written for him in ink. Except Jalen Dawson didn't flinch. He didn't shrink. He looked directly at the judge and offered nothing but silence. And that's when the first crack appeared. Jalen had been preparing for courtrooms since most kids were learning to drive. Not because he thought he'd be arrested, but because he was fascinated. While others played video games, he studied mock trials. Where most teens quoted sports stats, he quoted court precedents. His mother, Denise, had worked as a paralegal for over 2 decades. Every night, she brought home stories of courtroom chaos, backdoor deals, lazy defenses, and quick convictions. Jalen soaked it all up. By the time he was 14, he could dissect legal arguments better than most first-year law students. But none of that mattered to Judge Grayson. Not yet. Let's keep this short, the judge said. I've got a tea time at 2. More laughter. This time, though, Jalen smirked. Not because he found it funny, but because the judge had just made his first mistake, underestimating him. Prosecutor Mitchell Carrington stood up like he'd already won the lottery. Tall, tailored, and rehearsed, he laid out his opening like he was pitching a story he'd told too many times. Your Honor, the defendant was found in a stolen 2022 Audi A6, reported missing hours earlier. Pursued by officers. Caught fleeing. Fingerprints on the steering wheel. An open and shut case. He clicked his pen and sat back, smug. The gallery murmured again. It did sound bad. Stolen car. Fingerprints. Arrest. But Jalen had spent too many hours studying the space between what seems true and what is provable. He wasn't just listening, he was dissecting. When the judge turned to the defense, the public defender barely moved before Jalen gently touched her arm. She hesitated. He nodded. Then he said the words that turned the courtroom upside down. Your Honor, I'll be representing myself. You could hear the ear shift. Gasps. Eyebrows. Disbelief. Judge Grayson tilted his head, half amused, half offended. You'll what? I'll be defending myself, Jalen said, calm and measured. From that moment, everything changed. The courtroom grew still as Jalen approached the bench. Before I begin, I have a question for the prosecution, he said, voice unwavering. You claimed Officer Daniel Ruiz saw me behind the wheel. That's correct? Carrington nodded. Yes, it's in the report. Jalen paused. Then I moved to dismiss that testimony. Laughter returned briefly, nervous, unsure. The judge squinted. On what grounds? Because Officer Ruiz wasn't on duty during the chase. He wasn't there. And if the court allows, I request GPS data from his cruiser that night. Now there was no laughter, just Carrington, blinking too hard, face twitching. And that's when the jury started paying attention. Jalen wasn't just pointing out errors, he was unraveling them. One by one. He addressed the fingerprints. Yes, my prints were on the wheel, he said. But let's use logic. Have you ever tried on a jacket at a store? You put your hands in the pockets, zip it up, and leave. If someone steals that jacket later, does that make you the thief? The jury exchanged glances. He continued. That car was parked outside a 7-Eleven. I was there with friends. I leaned on the car. I opened the door. It was unlocked. That's it. A dumb move, sure. But a crime. Then he raised a question no one had thought to ask. Was the forensic specialist subpoenaed to testify about the fingerprint analysis? The courtroom froze. Carrington hesitated. No, he finally admitted. No cross-examination? No chance to verify the chain of custody? Jalen pressed. Silence again. Even Judge Grayson leaned forward now, fingers no longer drumming. But Jalen wasn't finished, not even close. He pulled out a piece of paper. I'd like to enter this into evidence, he said. The owner of the Audi, Mr. Raymond Whitaker, filed a statement with the police the night the car was stolen. It's in the original report. He read from it. Some kid jumped in my car while I was inside the gas station. But it wasn't the guy they arrested. I saw the kid. He was white. The courtroom gasped. The judge blinked. Carrington flushed. That statement, Jalen said, was never submitted by the prosecution. The officer who arrested me ignored it. And I don't match the description. The weight of that hung in the air like a storm cloud. And then, softly. I wasn't near the car when I was arrested. I wasn't driving. I wasn't fleeing. I was walking home with snacks and 2 friends. The only thing tying me to this case is poor police work and a courtroom that didn't bother asking enough questions. The silence that followed felt deafening. The judge looked tired, older, wiser. Does the prosecution have anything further? He asked. Carrington shook his head. And Judge Grayson, staring at the teenager he'd once mocked, gave his verdict. Case dismissed. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then it exploded. Reporters scribbled. Some in the gallery cheered. Others looked stunned, shaken. Jalen didn't move. He just stood still, letting it settle. The judge looked at him again. Something had changed. Mr. Dawson, he said. Jalen turned. You should consider law school. Jalen smiled. I already have. Outside, the courthouse steps swarmed with cameras and microphones. The questions came fast. Did you expect to win? What's next for you? How does it feel to outsmart a seasoned prosecutor? Jalen didn't answer. He pulled his hoodie up and walked past them. This wasn't about headlines. At the bottom of the steps, his mother stood waiting, arms crossed, tears shining. You scared me half to death, she said, pulling him into a hug. Had to take a risk, he said quietly. You always do, she replied, voice half proud, half exasperated. Across the street, Judge Grayson watched from his car, his gaze heavy with something unfamiliar, regret, maybe, or humility. Because what Jalen had done wasn't just rare, it was radical. He made the system stop and look, but here's the real question. How many others never get that chance? How many are convicted not because they're guilty, but because they couldn't fight back? Jalen had knowledge. He had courage. He had time to study, to speak, to stand. But for every Jalen, how many are lost in a system that prefers silence? This story isn't just about one dismissed case. It's about thousands that weren't. It's about a justice system that can bend, and sometimes break, under the weight of its own habits. If Jalen taught us anything, it's this. Knowledge is power. Truth matters. And sometimes the person you underestimate the most is the one who changes everything.